Good evening and a very warm welcome. We're going to start with a short language translation announcement. This is in English, but with Spanish and Portuguese translation.
Para recibir traducción desde Windows y Mac en los iconos de control de la reunión, hacemos clic en Interpretación, clic en Español y opcional para escuchar solo el español, clic en Silenciar audio original. De Android y iOS, en los tres puntitos hacemos clic en Interpretación de idiomas, clic en Español y opcional tocamos el interruptor para silenciar el audio original y hacemos clic en Finalizado.
Olá, para ter acesso à tradução em Windows e Macs, em reunião webinar, carregue no botão Interpretação representado com o símbolo global. Clique Português. Tem a opção Ouvir apenas a língua do tradutor e para isso clique em Silenciar áudio original. Se tem Android ou iOS, na opção Reunião, clique mais os três pontinhos. Clique Interpretação de idiomas, clique Português. Mais uma vez tem a opção para ouvir apenas o tradutor, se assim o quiser fazer. Clique Silenciar áudio original, clique Pronto, OK.
Okay, so we're very warm welcome. I hope you can hear well and the translation is fine. This is a talk, or a discussion, but also interactive. We really welcome your feelings and questions. So do share in the chat and do share where you're joining from. It would be lovely to know, and happy to see you in camera if you would like to engage in that way too. It'd be lovely. So this topic is developing self-mastery. And something Leonardo da Vinci said, one can have no smaller or greater mastery than mastery of oneself. And he was also a master in many ways, but it's interesting that this is the root, really, perhaps of all external mastery. I'm realizing I'm talking quite fast, just a reminder to slow down. So yes, master of our mind, maybe we get it called a wild horse, and being a master of that, if we have a destination in mind and we can be master, we will reach where we want to. So on this subject, it's like a real pleasure to welcome two experienced in different ways, but with meditation and also in worldly life. First of all, Konstantina, she's a chartered counselling psychologist, originally from Greece and currently based in Bristol, and has been associated with Raj Yoga for almost 3 years with the Brahma Kumaris. Parul, who's connecting from London, was practicing meditation as a teenager and has been meditating for almost 40 years with Raj Yoga, and working as an IT consultant and life coach. So this is the first time I think you're meeting as if virtually. So it'll be really interesting how things evolve, and feel free to interact, ask each other questions. And I have plenty of questions and thoughts I can share too if needed. But let's hear from both of you your initial thoughts on this topic and what came up for yourself. Shall we hear first from Konstantina? Shall we go to Bristol? Good evening.
Hello, really nice to be here. And reflecting on such an interesting subject, the subject of developing self-mastery. I was thinking that probably when we're thinking about self-mastery, one refers to the ability to have control over your life. And in psychology, it's associated with self-improvement, be able to fulfill one's potential, self-actualization, improving self-esteem. It's all under, I think, the concept of developing self-mastery, which of course it involves the question of being self-aware of what my strengths are, but also maybe what are the parts within me that is holding me back from be able to fulfill my potential. So I thought that one important question when we are thinking about self-mastery is the question of who am I? And it's interesting because in Greece, in the temple of Apollo in Delphi, there is a sign at the entrance which says, knowing yourself, know yourself. And I think it points to the fact that before we ask any questions, fundamental questions, important questions about life, because that was a place where people used to go to, find out about their destiny and about the future. But maybe the first thing we need to ask is, who am I? Because it's only from that as a starting point, understanding, the answer to that question, that so many other things fall in place, such as how I'm going to run my life, the decisions I'm going to make, how I'm going to think about things. And as well as knowing who am I think I also very important know who I'm not. Because again, that will be very misleading in my understanding of how I'm going to run my life, how I'm going to become a master of my life. So I think one of the difficulties that psychology has as well in answering that question, approaching that question, is that, and I think that's one of the challenges we all have at the moment, is the fact that we have over-identify or evaluate the human part of who we are. So if we think about how we refer to ourselves, we refer to ourselves as human beings. So there's so much emphasis on that, but not so much on the being dimension, which is to do with the non-physical, if you like, part of ourselves, the one that in spirituality we call, and particularly Raja Yoga, the soul, the consciousness, the invisible part, the part that it is invisible, but also so real. So what we tend to do, we tend to identify with the human being, what is more on the surface level, our gender, our age, physical appearance, possession, and all of that. So I think that this, for me, it's very important when we think about self-mastery is to try to approach it from this perspective of who am I, and maybe then self-mastery involves removing all these false personalities or identities and be able to operate from our deeper sense, which is our real self. So that was some initial thoughts that I had, and that's probably how I'm gonna, I was approaching the subject. And then obviously there are, I think, specific spiritual practices that will help us with that. And maybe I can talk a little bit later.
Thank you. Because yes, the topic is quite big, and but the approach sounds like a foundation before we move forward. The question comes before: who is mastering what, and who is the self? So thank you. So we are now going to travel eastwards to London. So good evening and welcome to Parul. It'd be lovely to hear your thoughts as well on this topic.
Sorry, I was on mute. So hello, Sarah, thank you. And hello, everyone, and Konstantina, and lovely to be here with everyone. And it's such a beautiful topic. And it's actually something that I've been thinking about, I would say, towards the end of the last year. And the reason I had this thought in my mind about self-mastery was absolutely, Konstantina's set the foundation of who am I, knowing myself. And I think the second step, or maybe a hand-in-hand step, is what do I want? What is it that I want in my life? And for me, the word mastery, if we think about it from a very simple way, the word mastery is, say, I want to become good at cooking, I want to have mastery in cooking, then I need to know that that is what I want to do. And you're talking about traveling east and traveling west, and I was thinking, if I get into the car and I start driving, what happens when I don't have a destination in mind? what would I be doing? I would just be driving aimlessly, right? I would be driving wherever it is the road took me. And yes, if that is what I want to do and I've got a day off and I'm just going for a drive, that is fine. But it relates to our life. And do I have a purpose? Do I have a direction that I want to take my life in? And I think it ties in. When I know who I am, then I also know what I want in my life. And so self-mastery is about, once I know what I want, then it's a question about how I'm going to get there, how I'm going to become a master at that. So, for example, very simply, if I know that I want to have good interactions with people, then it's like that is what I want to become a master at. Then I will be aware that when I'm having an interaction where maybe I'm getting a little irritated or maybe I'm getting a little upset, then I need to be, when I'm aware of that, I can then change the direction. So I like the blurb on the flyer is, the horses and riding the horse to take me to where I want to go rather than the horse going wherever it wants to go. So I can gently guide the horse to where I want it to go. So I don't see it as a forceful thing, but I see very much as a working with myself, working with my mind as a child and gently guiding it to where I want it to be. And one of the reasons why I was thinking about this last year, and I've been practicing little bits, which I'm going to share about, a bit like what Konstantina said, is what are some of the spiritual principles we can bring into our life and practices we can bring into our life. And so one of the things that I really helped me, and I've seen it helping me, is to take baby steps to get to that mastery point. So, for example, we talked about cooking. And if I wanted to master cooking, then I'm not going to say that the first dish that I'm going to master is, I don't know, maybe from an Indian point of view or an Eastern point of view, it might be, like samosas, making samosas. In my mind, that's a complicated dish. But, I would maybe make a little curry, a small little curry. And, I would make a small little curry and I would master that. I would take baby steps towards that. And so that would then help me to start practicing, to start getting better. And then I can aim for those extravagant dishes. So mastery for me is, what is it that I want? How does that align to who I am? And then how am I going to get to that, where I want to go, that destination? So that's a little beginning for our conversation.
Thank you so much. I think having an aim is giving a lot of focus and clarity, and we can measure ourselves against it. I have a quote here to maybe build on what you've both said, and this is Wes Fessler. So he's, I think he's a sportsman, American footballer from born in the last century beginning. He said, self-mastery is the challenge of transforming yourself from your own worst enemy into your greatest ally. And it kind of touched on, I think, what Konstantina was saying about knowing what I am, but also what I'm not. And then also what you were saying, Parul, about having a destination. And I was thinking, are we able to discern the right destination? Because if the part of me which is trying to fulfill a limited sense of myself, it also has an idea of a destination. So maybe it'd be nice to hear, I don't know if Konstantina wants to share a bit about how we know on this journey, to this destination, that we are working for the ally within.
Yes, I think they're quite a good indicators, if you like, in that is our own thinking. Our thoughts and our reactions, I would say, are the best ones. So when I identify, if you like, over-evaluate my form, if you like, dimension, my physical dimension, and completely underestimate my being dimension, I'm more likely to identify with things on the physical level. So I try to find meaning into things that are very temporary, and they are, they're gonna change, or they're gonna end, and that's gonna affect my thinking. So what's happening, we see that a lot, is that we don't think, but thinking happens to us. So we are in some ways at the mercy of our own thoughts, and that's where actually we are no masters of our mind. We are no masters of what's going through our mind. We are actually slaves to our mind, and lots of psychological problems stems from that. You see that when you identify, for example, with roles or with experiences or stories in your life, that inhibits, if you like, or distorts your ability to see the present as it is. So you see the present situations with the eyes of the past. So your personality, if you like, your story life, which has let you have some kind of unconscious assumptions or beliefs. For example, you might have a belief that I can't trust people, or people will let me down. I'm just giving an example. These are gonna limit the way that you're gonna interpret and view things. So then, you're not definitely a master, but also it will affect your relationship with life and what's happening in your life. For example, a big part of the life that we live is that there's so much uncertainty. If I'm identify with things that have, if you like, of fleeting nature, that means that I'm in a constant state of threat. So that means that I create a mind that constantly worries about what is going to happen next and try to control that. So it takes completely so I'm not I'm no master of my mind at all. I'm no master of my life, because I'm being pulled by my fears and my emotions because of the wrong identification at the first place. So also another way, I suppose, is to see, be aware, as well as be aware of what's going through my mind. And what's that? Be aware of my reaction. So what is it that disturbs me in real life, and who is that is get disturbed? Because again, if we kind of notice more closely that, we'll find out that the one who is disturbed is probably one of these false identities that we have created. So it's always good when we experience negative feelings and we get reactive to to ask that question, who is actually reacting to what?
Thank you. And it's very nice to start to understand this dynamic that you laid out by overemphasizing or identifying the physical image. We become, in a way, this slave because the circumstances are changing and there will be some, you mentioned uncertainty potentially, and how to check the self, what is disturbing. I don't know if Parul would like to add anything at this point. How to make an aim, as you mentioned, as a master and not as a slave. I feel it's quite slippery in a way, even knowing these ideas.
I think I would maybe add one sort of bit there to say is that definitely agree with looking and seeing what is it, how is it that I'm feeling. You know, you talked about, am I feeling anxious? Am I feeling threatened? Am I feeling upset? Or I would say, am I feeling happy? Because I feel that when I know myself, and absolutely we're talking about that being aspect of myself and the qualities of that being that I am. And the three qualities that I would mention here are love, peace, and joy. You know, it is an innate part of us, that spiritual being. And so when I'm doing something or whatever my aim is, and I'm going towards that, is it bringing me love? Is it bringing me peace? Is it bringing me joy? And if it's not, then that's a good indicator that maybe that aim is not quite, you know, in the right direction.
That's nice. So it's that checking, and is it, I guess it's the love, joy that is unconditional upon the fleeting nature of this world.
Mm.
And someone is also tied.
You're breaking up.
And that is kind of a surrender. I don't know if my internet just in this unpredictable world. So yes, how do we, because it feels like you touched upon a false identity, and so we either have the self, which is this being where we are naturally peaceful, naturally joyful, naturally loving. And that is, I guess, when we feel master, we feel good in that space. What is it that you would like to share, either of you, the practices you've both touched on that help you to be aligned and stay in that?
I could say. So it's about what we talked about, the destination. What direction do I want to go in? And so one of the practices that has really helped me, that I've been doing recently, is journaling. So I've been on and off, I've done journaling, but never sort of on a continuous or, you know, with that aim and doing it. So that was part of my baby steps, is Parul, even if it's 2 minutes, just do your journal at the end of the day. And so I started off with just very nice 5 simple questions. And I felt that they helped me to see which direction I was going on, or which of my actions or which of my maybe behavior or thinking was taking me in the direction that I didn't want to go in. And there were 5 simple questions that I asked myself for a month every day. And you will then when I did this, I saw a pattern. And so then, it's like the driving, which things are taking me away from my aim and which ones are taking me to my aim. And so those 5 simple questions were, what inspired me or excited me today? The second question was, what did I do that drained my energy? And the third question was, what did I learn today? The fourth question was, what am I grateful for today? And the last question was, how did I push the needle forward today? And obviously, however many answers within each of those questions, whether it's 1 or 10, but doing that helped me to see the pattern of what was taking me forward and what was taking me away and how I needed to adjust. So that is one practice that I really enjoyed. And I just add one more thing. So now my next journaling aspect is a little bit about what we talked about earlier, the best of myself and the worst of myself, and just having 3 columns. So the worst of myself, the best of myself, and thinking about the things I've done and which box do they tick in. which action I did today is supporting the worst of myself or the best of myself. And at the end, you can total the points and just see, again, very clearly, what are the things that are taking me to where I want to be, and what are the things that are, not. So I find journaling and that reflective space very useful.
I absolutely resonate with that as a fellow journaler, although I don't know if I can say that because I probably don't do it enough, but it's whenever time is created, and also I do a diary at the end of every day as a kind of a review. It's so valuable also you can look back and see in a way objectively. I think someone is asking, what is the last question? Was it how I have moved forward today? Was it the last one?
Yeah, how I push the needle forward. So how I move forward today.
Yes. Thank you. It'd be nice to hear what comes up for Konstantina on this subject.
Yes, it was really nice. I was enjoying the practice that Parul was mentioning. I was thinking how nice it is to be specific and have some kind of concrete ways of developing self-mastery. And it's all about having this self-awareness and doing that checking with yourself. And also always creating a program of how to accomplish that on a daily basis. I was thinking, I suppose, for this one practice that has been extremely important, in particular in being able to make decisions about where the mind goes and make sure that the mind doesn't go into wasteful thinking, is the one of accepting, working a lot on accepting and being in alliance with what's going on in one's life. So really monitor the urge or the need to sometimes ask questions such as why something is happening, or trying to label things as good or bad. So there's more like a practice of accepting things as they are and be more in alignment with what's going on. And there are 2 phrases that I have found very helpful here. They both come from Raja Yoga teachings. And the one is the one regarding putting a full stop to situations. And the other one is this will also pass, or whatever comes will go. I find that extremely powerful statements when I'm trying to, when this one is trying to, I suppose, clearing what's in the mind and make the mind one's friend. Because I think to label or to resist adds unnecessary suffering in a situation. And the acceptance doesn't mean that I don't problem solve. I'm still interested in problem solving and saying, you know, a situation if I can. But if that's not within my control, I think it's so, or even where I problem solve, it's important not to add unnecessary narrative or questioning about a situation. Because I think that in that way, I don't become a victim. That's where we're going back to the slave and the master. I don't let circumstances of my life to have power over me. I'm not a victim. And I think interesting things happen then because I you know, it was interesting in what Parul was saying before. It was talking about positive states, not positive emotions necessarily, but positive states of being, such as joy, peace, and love. And I think if I don't resist to what's going on, I create that, I go back to that space of peace again. So it's almost like the image of a lake, you know, that the lake is always still, no matter what the weather is like. So that inner space cannot be affected, no matter what the circumstances are. I think that's a very powerful spiritual practice. And I think the other one is, which I think Parul also mentioned, is the practice of gratitude. Because again, that takes me out from the state of lacking to the state of fullness. So I'm constantly connecting to maybe what's already there that I need to be grateful for on a physical, on a pragmatic level, but also the deeper qualities of the soul. Yes.
One thought came up is on this journey, sometimes we can create expectations of ourselves, of what we want to see. And we can get very inspired, but then sometimes, and that's what I really appreciate about what you're both sharing, and the quality of it is like gentleness, but a certain focus, not sort of too airy-fairy, quite specific. So do you want to expand on how we have this dedicated, you Parul, especially, you've been many years, and this, it's like a dedication, and it comes across that you're still very much in that phase of learning and growing, and that was after many years. So do you have any tips on how we're reaching high in a sense? We talk about mastery, that's like a high goal, but to make the journey light as well.
I mean, yes, having practiced for a number of years, but I would still say, you know, it's like discovering so many new things every day. But one of the things that I remember, you know, Dadi Janki, and many of you may know her, she talked about, and it stayed with me, is when you climb a mountain, there are ups and downs. You're generally heading up, but you sometimes have to go down to climb up again. And so in our life, we will have those ups and downs. But it's keeping motivated. And the way I keep motivated is not giving myself big aims and big expectations of myself. I've done that at times, and I've felt the pressure of it, and I've just given up. And in that process of giving up, I've lost confidence in myself. And so what I now do is just what I said at the beginning was baby steps. Focus on something small, keep it going, and do it for 3 months and see. And I don't even promise myself I'll do it after 3 months, but I tell myself I'll do it for 3 months. And in that 3 months, quite often it becomes a practice that I then continue with, and it then is what is next kind of thing. But it's like not telling myself, because I think that also creates pressure, is to say, I'm going to do this from now on forever. But, just try something out for 3 months and keep at it. And just one thing, don't say, I'm going to do this and this and this and this. Just pick 1 or 2 and say, I'm going to focus on this for the next 3 months. And if it works for you, great, continue.
That's interesting. And it feels like within that time, perhaps there's sufficient benefit to it becomes like normal in a way, rather than something I feel like practicing.
And just the other thing is my confidence in myself grows, because I've told myself I'm going to do this. And by doing it, it's like that self-esteem, the confidence in ourselves grows. And before I sort of end, I just also like to say that the meditation and the connection with the highest within ourselves and the highest energy, the universal energy, that is absolutely key to giving the strength to be able to say, yes, and this is what I want to do. So that is also key.
Thank you. And I wonder if Konstantina would like to add anything. And also, if you want to share a little bit more about this full stop, I'm quite intrigued, and how that works, what is happening in that space. It is quite different, I think, from in therapy, where it would be less about that and more about perhaps potentially analysis or going into the story of the situation. So anything you want to share on the aspect of not creating expectations, and anything about full stop?
Yeah, it's a completely different approach, and I can see how it can create a reaction. If you see, it can be misunderstood, actually. Maybe it's the best way to put it. That's why I made the point about it doesn't mean that you are passive to what's going on. But sometimes, and you see that a lot when people are struggling with a situation, you've got 2 things you're working with. You've got the situation itself, which most of the times is a difficult situation that people encounter. And then you've got people's interpretation about that situation. And that is, I think, where it's the unnecessary additional suffering that one can create. So spirituality, I suppose, gives us a different relationship with the drama, if you like, because really what we are talking about here is no resisting what is unfolding in front of you. And in some ways, here I will question the function of resisting. Is this resisting actually adding something? Does it give me? It's a different thing. I need maybe to question why something is happening, if there's something to learn from it, so I don't repeat it in the future. But that's not normally how the human mind works. We keep going back to that situation and questioning it because we can't accept it. So there's nothing functional, if you like, or constructive in this trying to find out why things are happening. But from a spiritual perspective, we know that if we go a little bit deeper, we know that drama has its own purpose, if you like. So in some ways, even if something that today feels like the most awful things that can ever happen to someone, in the big scheme of things, we might find it. I suppose I invite all of us, if we go back to things that have happened in our lives that we really resented, when we look back, maybe they were the catalyst for huge transformation. So how can we say whether something is bad or good? It's best to work with something. I think that's how I understand put a full stop, rather than to resist its existence or presence in our life. Yes.
That really helps. And this aspect of what can I learn also, I think was Parul, one of Parul's like reflective questions, and it helps us take be a master of the situation, and that there's an outcome which I make positive. There's an interesting quote that those who will not govern themselves are condemned to find masters to govern over them. That was Stephen Pressfield. So you mentioned situations externally, I think Konstantina, but what about with other people? I know, Parul, you've been living in or working closely with people in the community, also work situations. What is it that you feel you are learning or would like to share to, I guess, to be a master, but also to, how does that affect your relationships with others? And because I think the dynamic of feeling slave, master is something that can play out with other people.
And especially family. And so I have a very special sister. And you know, we're both very strong-minded, but our ideas are very different. But nothing wrong. It's just we have different choices, different thoughts, and so we have quite an interesting clash. And you know, we rub each other the wrong way. So a few years ago, you know, I was like, and I would always just think to myself, well, what have I done to upset her? You know, why is she being so mean to me? And, you know, why is she behaving this way to me? And I had a realization a few years ago where it was, you know, understanding a little bit about the law of karma and knowing that, you know, there's always give and take going on. And who knows when this, you know, it's like, how can I blame her and say, why is she behaving to me like this? Maybe in another lifetime, I've done something to her. And so this is just karma coming round. And so I said to myself, I'm going to put a stop to it. I don't want this karma to continue. And so that again became like an aim for me. It was like, I really do not want to, I just want this karma to finish and our relationship to be very beautiful. And one of the spiritual principles we talked about is good wishes, good feelings, good wishes. And so I decided that day that from now on, I'm just going to have good feelings and good wishes for her. And I'm not going to talk about her in a, you know, like even to my mom to say, oh, look, she did this again. I'm not going to think about it either, because thinking about it creates a vibration about it. So from my side, just loving, feeling good about whatever she does, however she does, and a little bit about, you know, acceptance. She's doing what she knows, and that's okay. I'm not going to judge. I'm just going to have good wishes. 3 months, and the relationship completely changed. Absolutely, completely changed. So again, you know, this whole thing about if we really want something and we keep an aim, magic happens.
Such a powerful message. I'm very inspired. it's like, again, very practical, and as Konstantina said, quite specific. And so we can add to our list, you mentioned slave and how to be master, and victim, to be the master rather than the victim. Now it's the beggar rather than taking, we become the giver, and that's another mastery, isn't it? To the giving is not physical, but in the thoughts. So something else for the toolbox to turn things around. Does Konstantina have anything to add on to this? Your thoughts?
Yeah, it's another practice, I think, a spiritual practice, but it's a very challenging one, but it fits very well with what Parul was just saying about good wishes, even when nothing in the situation, I suppose, aspires you to do that. Actually, that's the time where you need to do it the most, I think. And it kind of links with developing an attitude of gratitude. And I think something that I have experimented, I'm not very consistent with, but it's giving what I think I'm lacking. So it's, if one feels like what they are missing in their life is love or praise, or I don't know, whatever it is, normally, you can reverse that by actually start giving that. And then interesting things happen. I think that's what you were just saying. If I just give what I think that is lacking, the whole thing is kind of transformed. Or I might find out that what I think that I'm lacking is actually always been there. I just haven't utilized it within myself. But yeah, it's a good practice to do from time to time, and just give what you think that you lack, and then you find out that it was always there.
So interesting spiritual principle to dwell on, and I guess experiment with. And it made me think, when you don't feel like going for a walk or going to the gym, that is usually when you should, because it's when we've become, this sort of lazy and lethargic. And that it's the same principle. When you don't feel like being generous, spirited, that is exactly when something needs to shift. So the giving and giving respect, if we feel we're lacking, that yes, taking the initiative. So we somehow time has gone really fast. Is there anything you want to add, Parul, to this subject, or that that your feeling is a kind of an essence? And within that, when you mentioned aim, anything you want to elaborate on your own aim that might inspire?
Just really very much, having the spiritual practices as a foundation. And we live in a world where there's weeds, right? In your garden, you don't plant any weeds, but you have to keep on weeding every week. Otherwise, it becomes a big job. And so this spiritual practice of regularly studying, meditating, becomes like this inner gardening that I do. And that I feel is so important. So, whatever it is you do in terms of meditating, in terms of spiritual input, continue to do that regularly. That helps, because that also then brings the clarity. Because like you say, I've been doing it for nearly 40 years as a teenager, but I know many times, say 10, 15 years ago, I thought something was absolutely okay or right, and now I would not. So it's like, as I continue on this journey, I start noticing things, or I start becoming aware of the subtleties of things that I want as my aim. And so really just, and within all of that, I think is just loving ourselves, being gentle, being kind, and loving ourselves. And the more we do things out of love, the more it becomes part of our practice and we enjoy it. So that's what I would encourage everyone.
That really resonates, and the fact that you have this same zeal, enthusiasm, and with gardening you need constancy, so it needs to be sustainable, isn't it? So this energy of love, and I think that helps relationships, because then we can also be like that with others.
Yes.
And
not get heavy about pain, not make our life joyful, fun, happy.
Exactly. There's no reason to not enjoy every aspect, and it's a happy discovery within this. As you mentioned, those core qualities, it's like I guess a lottery actually that we're discovering in this toolkit. Yes, it just reminds me there's what lies behind us and what lies before us are tiny matters compared to what lies within us. I thought that was nice, just popped up. This is Ralph Waldo Emerson. How about you, Konstantina? What would you like to add? Anything that don't know if analogy of gardening works for you also? There's weeds in Bristol as well.
Yeah, well, we always, interesting enough, we always use this analogy when we're talking about challenging negative thoughts and becoming a master of one's mind. That's exactly the analogy we're using. We see the mind as the garden, and just get rid of what is unnecessary and flourish what is good. And I think our meditation echoes that, because particularly Raja Yoga meditation, it is about coming out of ego-filled mind, if you like, to a soul consciousness mind. It's all about cultivating that and having the experience of what that is like. So yeah, it definitely resonates.
It's interesting, that aspect, that especially the background you have, it's, I guess, a completely different model, because like say Freudian thinking is almost like, well, I'm not qualified to say exactly his thought, but his concept of ego is also his own, but it's very much like we're driven by this ego. But with spirituality, there is the understanding of the true self behind, which brings, I guess, the focus, rather than trying to solve ego or work at that level. I don't know if you want to add anything to that, because I know it's been so helpful to start to understand that beneath this ego, which is often understood as who we are, is not the master in his own house, as I think Freud said.
Well, I suppose it can help you to an extent understanding the ego. What it can never enable you to do is to find lasting fulfillment in life. So you're tackling, it's something that sometimes we say, if you don't get the diagnosis right, you can never get the right treatment. You can only resolve things there and there, but not in a holistic way. And I think that's probably where psychology stands, where it ignores the spiritual aspect of things, that it's a limited progress that someone can make within that model. Because, and I know I used that analogy before, I can use it now, that it's almost like we said, it's a bubble machine. We are constantly trying to pop all these different bubbles, but unless we turn off the machine that creates the bubbles, we haven't resolved the problem. So we are working really hard at, helping people, but we haven't addressed the root of the problem, which I think it's going probably where we started the talk. It's that fundamental question of who am I?
Yeah, that's a helpful analogy, that each bubble is like different false identity. But as I know you've also said in the past, in a way, one can't really compare the two. They each have their role, but it is nice to play with this model that creates, I guess, that aim on a lifelong practice and hobby. So yeah, I was wondering if Parul, you'd like to add anything, but also if you'd like to share a few words in meditation for sort of 3-4 minutes, to also get a taste of some of your practice.
I think let's do meditation, and in that meditation, let's maybe go back to feeling that love or peace or joy within, because that then helps us to say, what do we want in our life? When we get a taste of those mangoes, then we want to eat more mangoes. Is that okay?
That sounds very good.
Okay. So I'd suggest sit comfortably, maybe sit up straight. That always helps with meditation. And I'd also say, if you can, keep your eyes open, rest them wherever you want, on one of our backgrounds or on the, wherever your window is, but just gently rest your eyes somewhere. And as you do that, take a deep breath in and out. Relax your shoulders, your neck, so you're feeling good. The body is comfortable. And now, once again, take a deep breath in and let go. And we're going to draw our attention on the being that we are. And the being within this body is filled with love, peace, and joy. And for now, let's just focus on the peace. So maybe visualize within the being there is a room, and that room is labeled peace. And so you walk inside this room within yourself, and you open the door, and this energy of peace just whooshes out. And you take a step into that room. And all there is just peace, stillness, calm. And there is the feeling that everything is okay. I am okay. There is a silence within. And I feel relaxed. And this is a room within myself. Peace is my natural quality. And so let me enjoy that feeling, that power of peace within myself for at least 5 to 10 minutes every morning. Walk into that room, spend time in here, and then as I go through my day, the rest of today, let me bring that energy of peace and calmness in my thoughts, my feelings, my words, and my actions. And let me do that in a very conscious way. I am a being of peace. Om Shanti.
Thank you. It's always a feeling to remain quiet after meditation. Thank you so much. As you say, to keep it with us, that's very practical. So we have stepped into this Zoom room together, but we will take away a room of peace with us. And all we need to do is go in there, just like clicking on a Zoom call, but we don't need the internet for this one. Thank you so much to Konstantina and Parul, and also all of you who've created this atmosphere and shared your thoughts. And we look forward to welcoming you again. And we will also just share information about what's happening in 2 weeks. We will be welcoming Natalie from Loughborough and Dr. Sarah Ika from London. And so do join us. And also there are courses and different events in the space. We'll just put it in the chat as well. This was also recorded. You can go to Sky Beyond Sky for this if you would like to catch up. Thanks once again to Parul.
Thank you very much. And it's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
Tina, thank you for sharing and inspiring us. So we'll see you again. Have a good evening.